So in the last hour, how many times have you instinctively reached for your phone, maybe without even, a clear purpose?
Yeah.
Seriously, I want you to think about it for a second. Just in the last 60 minutes, was it like twice, 5 times?
Probably more.
Right. Did you even notice you were doing it?
It is, it's a really profound question to start with. And I mean, if we're being brutally honest with ourselves, the answer for most of us is probably way more times than we'd ever care to admit.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it happens so quickly,
Okay.
so seamlessly that it barely even registers as a conscious decision anymore.
And that automatic reflex, that is exactly what we're unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating source text. It's an advanced English learning transcript and comprehension analysis, and it's fittingly titled The Age of Distraction.
That's a great title.
It really is. And the mission of our deep dive today is to sort of decode the architecture of this modern, hyper-distracted reality we all find ourselves living in.
Yeah.
We want to understand exactly how our attention is being hijacked and, well, more importantly, equip you with the really vital, almost countercultural skill of cultivating deep focus.
And we really need to establish, like right out of the gate here, that this is not merely some discussion about productivity hacks.
Right. No life hacks here.
Exactly. We are not just going to sit here and give you tips on how to clear your inbox faster or organize your digital calendar.
Yeah, there's a million other places for that.
Right. Drawing from our source material, the stakes are actually significantly higher. The battle for your attention is, in reality, a battle for the integrity of your own consciousness.
Man, the integrity of our own consciousness. When I read that phrase in the text, it struck me as incredibly heavy.
It is heavy.
But, when you break it down, it makes perfect sense, because if consciousness is essentially just, well, the sum of what we pay attention to, then whoever or whatever controls our attention is fundamentally shaping our lived experience.
That is exactly the core philosophical pillar of this entire text. It's this constant distraction doesn't just make us less efficient at work. It affects the quality of our relationships. It degrades our inner lives, and it fundamentally alters our overall experience of the world.
Yeah.
It is literally about how you experience being alive. If your attention is fractured, well, your reality is fractured.
Fractured reality. So if we are in this battle for the integrity of our consciousness, we really need to clearly define the adversary, right?
We do.
Because humanity has always had distractions. I mean, we've always had daydreaming or, staring out the window or a colleague tapping us on the shoulder.
Sure.
But the text argues there is a massive shift between the general feeling of being distracted in the past versus what we are fighting against today.
Yeah, there is a categorical difference. It's huge.
Yeah.
If we look at historical distractions, they were transient and they were accidental.
Okay, transient and accidental, meaning what exactly?
Well, imagine you are, say, a craftsman 100 years ago, working in a wood shop. A loud noise happens outside or someone walks by and starts a conversation.
Right.
It interrupts you, yes, but it is a passing event. It's an accident of your physical environment.
Yeah.
The environment wasn't intentionally plotting to disrupt your woodworking,
No, it's just the world happening around you. It's sort of like a sudden gust of wind.
That's a good way to look at it.
You might lose your balance for a second, but then the wind stops and you go back to what you were doing.
Exactly. But modern digital distractions are fundamentally different. They are persistent, they are deeply personalized, and they are algorithmically optimized to be completely irresistible.
They know us better than we know ourselves.
They really do. They are not accidental interruptions. They are highly engineered ecosystems designed specifically for what the source text calls cognitive capture.
Cognitive capture. That phrase perfectly encapsulates the modern condition. Because, just to build on my wind analogy for a second, if historical distractions were a sudden gust of wind, modern digital distractions are like being placed inside a highly engineered wind tunnel.
Oh, that's good.
A wind tunnel that has been calibrated using billions of behavioral data points to blow you specifically over.
Yes.
And yet, we constantly blame ourselves. I hear it all the time. People say, oh, I just have terrible willpower, or I'm so easily distracted these days.
I know, we internalize it.
Right. But if we are dealing with ecosystems designed by thousands of the smartest engineers in the world, backed by billions of dollars, specifically for cognitive capture, I mean, is it really a fair fight?
It is not a fair fight at all, and we have to stop pretending it is. When we use the term cognitive capture, we are talking about entire systems designed to literally bypass your logical brain and seize your executive function.
Seize it.
Yeah. The text actually quotes neuroscientist Adam Gazzaley, who describes this as a, quote, high-tech onslaught against our cognitive control.
A high-tech onslaught.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. So this isn't a moral failing on your part. Yeah. It is an asymmetrical war against your neurology. The technology is actively exploiting evolutionary vulnerabilities in how our brains process information and seek novelty.
Which brings us to how deeply ingrained this has become in our physical bodies. Because the source material uses this phrase that I honestly haven't been able to stop thinking about.
Which one?
It calls reaching for our phones a somatic impulse, a nervous tick of the modern condition.
Yeah, that's a powerful description.
It really is a somatic impulse, meaning your hand is physically reaching for the phone before your conscious mind has even formulated a reason to check it.
Exactly. The text is arguing that this behavior has completely bypassed conscious thought. You aren't reasoning with yourself, sitting there thinking, oh, I have a specific piece of information I need to retrieve, therefore I will unlock my device.
Right. There's no logic step.
None at all. Your body is simply reacting to an internal trigger. It has become a physical reflex, much like pulling your hand away from a hot stove. But in this case, the trigger is usually just a microscopic feeling of boredom or anxiety.
Like tapping your foot to music or blinking when something gets near your eye.
Yes.
You just feel this slight discomfort, this like microscopic itch of a lull in stimulation, and boom, your hand is in your pocket.
It's automatic.
I know you listening right now have had that moment where you pull out your phone to check the time, you look right at the screen, put it back in your pocket, and immediately realize you have absolutely no idea what time it is.
We've all done it.
Your body performed the reflex, but your consciousness wasn't even involved in the transaction.
And creating that somatic impulse, turning your engagement into an involuntary nervous imperial, that is the ultimate goal of the people designing these ecosystems.
Which naturally begs the question, why? Why are they doing this? Why pour billions of dollars into capturing your cognition? Because building these cognitive wind tunnels isn't cheap. What is the actual return on investment for making me check my phone 100 times a day?
It all comes down to the business model of the attention economy.
The attention economy.
Right. The platforms we use every day, social media, news aggregators, video sharing apps, they are not providing a finite service in the traditional economic sense.
Okay, meaning what?
Meaning you aren't paying a subscription fee for a discrete product. Their ultimate metric, the thing that drives their stock price, their revenue, and every single algorithmic design choice is maximizing time on device.
Because your time on the device equals data collected and advertisements viewed?
Exactly.
You aren't the customer buying a product. Your attention is the product being sold to advertisers. It's basically a casino in your pocket.
That casino comparison is incredibly apt, actually. Because to maximize that time on device, these platforms utilize specific mechanisms to keep you engaged. And the most powerful tool in their entire arsenal is something called the variable reward schedule.
Variable reward schedule. Okay, explain that.
This is a concept rooted deeply in behavioral psychology. It traces all the way back to B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning experiments.
With the pigeons, right, or the rats.
Both, yeah. And it is the exact same principle that makes slot machines so profoundly addictive.
Let's unpack that variable reward schedule, because I think understanding this mechanism really pulls the curtain back on the whole magic trick.
It does.
Because if a slot machine gave you $1 every single time you pulled the lever, it wouldn't be a game.
No.
It would be a minimum wage job. It would be entirely predictable and frankly super boring.
Yeah, you'd get tired of it.
On the flip side, if it never gave you $1, you would realize it's broken and just walk away.
Right. The psychological hook is the unpredictability.
Yes.
When you pull the lever on a slot machine, you don't know what you're going to get. It might be nothing, it might be a small win, or it might be the jackpot. That uncertainty is what drives the compulsion to pull it again and again.
Because you just don't know.
Exactly. And what neuroscientists have found is that the dopamine spike in your brain, it doesn't actually happen when you get the reward. It happens during the anticipation of the reward.
The anticipation is the actual high.
Yes.
That completely reframes how I look at my feed. When we open these apps, we don't know what we're going to see. Will it be some, mundane update from someone we barely know? Will it be a genuinely hilarious video?
Or an urgent message.
Right. Will a photo we posted have 100 likes or 0? The unpredictability keeps us swiping down to refresh the feed. We are just pulling the lever over and over.
And this mechanism actively exploits the dopamine system. We need to be clear here. Dopamine is often misunderstood by people as the pleasure chemical.
Yeah, that's what I always thought it was, the reward feeling.
Most people do.
Yeah.
But it's actually the seeking chemical.
Seeking chemical.
Yes. It motivates you to explore, to find food, to find information. These algorithms hijack that seeking circuitry. You are getting a neurochemical reward just for seeking the novel information, regardless of whether the information itself is actually satisfying or useful.
So we are talking about a constant drip feed of novel, bite-sized stimuli that is physically rewiring our neural pathways.
Literally changing the brain structure.
This isn't just a bad habit then, or some character flaw. It is a structural change in how our brains process information and seek fulfillment.
Yes, and the primary vehicle for this rewiring, especially recently, is the infinite scroll.
Oh, the infinite scroll.
Think about the physical design of it. In the past, consuming media had natural boundaries.
Like reaching the end of a chapter.
Exactly. Reading a newspaper, a magazine, or a book, it had a physical endpoint. You reached the bottom of the page, and that physical boundary served as a natural stopping cue for your brain.
It forced a pause.
Right. It was an opportunity for your conscious mind to step in and say, okay, do I want to continue doing this, or should I do something else?
It was a built-in friction point.
Exactly. But the infinite scroll removes all stopping cues. There is no bottom of the page anymore.
It just keeps going.
The friction of having to click next page or physically turn a sheet of paper has been entirely eliminated. The content just flows endlessly, merging that variable reward schedule we talked about with a completely frictionless delivery system.
That's a dangerous combination.
Very. You never have to make a conscious choice to keep going. You only have to make a conscious choice to stop, which is significantly harder when your dopamine system is actively engaged.
I really want to paint a picture of what this actually feels like in daily life, because I know everyone listening has experienced this exact trance.
Oh,
you're sitting on the couch. Maybe you have 5 minutes before you need to log on to a work call.
Just a quick gap.
Right. You pull out your phone just to check one specific thing, maybe the weather forecast for the afternoon. You open the weather app. But out of the corner of your eye, you see a little red notification badge on your social media app.
And you tap it.
You tap it, and the next thing you know, you are surfacing from a digital fugue state 45 minutes later.
Yep.
You have scrolled through hundreds of images, politically charged headlines, short-form videos. You have absolutely no real memory of what you just consumed. You didn't even check the weather, and you completely missed the start of your work call.
It is a genuine trance state. And, stepping out of that trance brings us to the really hidden cost of this machinery.
The hidden cost.
Yeah. We've established how the distraction is engineered, but we really have to look at the tangible damage it inflicts on our daily performance and our cognitive state. The source material points out that this environment forces us into a state of perpetual shallow focus.
Shallow focus. So we are just constantly skimming the surface of our attention, never actually diving into the deep water.
Exactly. And the most insidious part of this shallow focus, and honestly, perhaps the most important cognitive concept in our deep dive today, is what the text calls attention residue.
Attention residue. I have to say, this concept completely changed how I view my workday.
It's a game changer. So attention residue is the cognitive cost of context switching.
Okay.
We tend to operate under the illusion that our attention is like a light switch.
Yeah.
Right? That we can instantly snap it from one task to another with zero latency.
Just flip the switch and boom, I'm focusing on the new thing.
Right. But the reality is that the human brain just doesn't work that way. When you shift your focus from task A to task B, your attention doesn't immediately follow entirely.
It lags.
Yes. A residue of your attention remains stuck thinking about the original task.
So let's apply this to a real scenario just to make it concrete. Say I have to write a complex quarterly report.
Okay, good example.
I'm deep in the spreadsheet, making really good progress, but then I hear the little ping of an email.
The dreaded ping.
Right. And I think, you know what? I'll just quickly see who it is. I take a 2-second glance at the inbox, and I see a message from my boss with a vague subject line like, need to discuss.
Oh, that's the worst.
It really is. Now, I don't open it, I don't reply, I just see it, and I go right back to my report. I haven't really lost any time. Right. I mean, it was 2 seconds.
In terms of seconds on a clock, yeah, you lost almost nothing. But in terms of cognitive capacity, the cost is massive.
Really? Just from seeing the subject line?
Yes. The concept of attention residue dictates that a significant portion of your cognitive bandwidth is now occupied by that unread message. Your brain is subconsciously running background processes, trying to resolve the ambiguity.
Like, am I in trouble?
Exactly. Are you in trouble? Is it a new project assignment? Did you mess up the previous report?
Oh, man.
You are no longer fully present on that spreadsheet. Your cognitive performance, your ability to process complex information and make creative leaps, is actively degraded for minutes afterward, simply because of that 2-second glance.
That makes so much sense. It's kind of like keeping 20 heavy software programs running in the background of your computer while you're trying to render a high-definition video.
Yes, that's exactly it.
You're trying to do this one computationally heavy task, but Spotify is updating, your antivirus is running a full system scan, you have 40 browser tabs open, and your email client is constantly pinging the server.
And what happens to the computer?
The machine just lags, the fan is spinning, the laptop is getting physically hot, but the progress bar is moving at an absolute snail's pace. That is our brain on attention residue.
It is. Now, what happens when we scale this up? Because in the modern workplace, it isn't just 1 2-second glance, is it?
Not even close.
Multiply that glance by 100 times a day. It's the Slack notifications popping up on your screen, your phone buzzing on the desk, the constant low-level urge to quickly check a news feed.
It's nonstop.
The cumulative effect on your cognitive performance throughout the entire day is staggering. You are operating at a fraction of your actual intellectual potential, constantly hamstrung by your own divided attention.
The societal consequence of this is genuinely terrifying when you think about it. We have created a workforce, and honestly, an entire culture, that is engaged in this frantic, nonstop, work-like performance.
Yeah, work-like performance. That is a brilliant framing from the source text. It looks like productivity from the outside.
It mimics productivity perfectly.
Right.
You're typing fast, you're clearing out your inbox, you're jumping from one Zoom meeting to another, you are responding to messages in real time, you feel incredibly busy, your stress levels are through the roof, and at the end of the day, you are utterly exhausted. But if you stop and ask yourself, what did I actually accomplish today that moved the needle? The answer is often nothing.
Nothing at all.
It feels like you ran a marathon, but you just ran in place for 8 hours.
Because true progress, the creation of real value and the solving of hard problems, rarely happens in a state of shallow focus.
It just can't.
No. And this leads us directly to what we are actually missing out on. We now understand the cognitive degradation caused by the attention economy and attention residue, but we really need to contrast that with the optimal state.
Right, the alternative.
Exactly. We need to talk about the lost art of deep work and flow.
The antidote to the shallow skimming. The source material leans really heavily into Cal Newport's concept of deep work.
Yes, a very important concept.
Newport defines this as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their absolute limit.
That requirement, to push your cognitive capabilities to their limit, is absolutely vital to understanding the concept. Deep work is not just doing administrative tasks in a quiet room.
It's not just checking emails silently.
No. It is engaging in a task that requires so much of your brain power, so much intense focus, that there is simply no bandwidth left over for anything else. This is where you learn complex new skills, where you synthesize difficult information, where you write the brilliant code, where true lasting value is actually created.
It's the heavy lifting of the mind.
Exactly.
And the source pairs this beautifully with psychologist Csikszentmihalyi's concept of flow. Flow is that almost magical state where you become so completely immersed in an activity that you literally lose track of time.
It's an incredible feeling.
It really is. Your sense of self, your ego, your worries about the future, they all sort of dissolve into the work itself. You look up and 3 hours have passed, but it felt like 30 minutes.
And what's crucial to understand is that the modern digital environment actively militates against this state.
Militates against it. How so?
Well, flow requires a runway. It takes time and sustained effort to get into that state of deep immersion. Your brain needs to load all the relevant information into your working memory.
Like setting up all the pieces on a chessboard before you can play.
Great analogy. If you are constantly context switching, if you are incurring attention residue every 5 minutes with a notification, you will never get off the ground. You are constantly interrupting the runway, forcing your brain to start the takeoff process over and over and over again.
Man, that is frustrating. But let me ask you a question that I struggle with personally, and I'm sure a lot of you listening do too.
Okay.
If deep work and flow are where our best work happens, where we create the most value, and frankly, where we find a profound sense of psychological satisfaction,
They are.
then why does shallow work feel so much more appealing in the moment?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Why do I gravitate toward the busy work of clearing 50 emails instead of, say, writing one complex chapter of a book?
That is the fundamental tension of human nature in the digital age. And if we reconnect this back to the dopamine loop and the brain's energy conservation mechanisms, the answer becomes pretty clear.
Energy conservation.
Yeah. Deep work is hard. It requires massive cognitive friction. Staring at a blank page, trying to solve a complex mathematical proof, or strategizing a new business model, it is initially deeply uncomfortable.
It takes effort.
Your brain evolved to conserve calories, right? It wants to avoid that high energy expenditure if it can.
It wants the easy win. It wants the path of least resistance.
Exactly. Shallow work, replying to a short email with "sounds good," organizing a digital folder, or checking off a minor administrative task, it provides immediate, low-friction completion. You get a tiny dopamine hit every time you click send or check a box. It feels like progress, neurologically speaking. Your brain registers it as a completed task, even if it is completely inconsequential in the grand scheme of your long-term goals.
Wow. So it's the illusion of productivity feeding our neurochemistry.
Yes.
So if the very environment we live and work in is hostile to focus, and our own brains are evolutionarily wired to take the path of least resistance for that easy dopamine hit, how do we fight back?
We have to change our mindset.
Right, because we have the diagnosis now, but what is the cure? According to our sources, the defense doesn't start with, throwing our phones into the ocean.
Though that is tempting sometimes.
Very tempting, but it starts with the mind.
It does. It requires a profound philosophical shift before we even touch our devices. And that shift is reconceptualizing boredom.
Boredom. The absolute enemy of the modern citizen. We treat it like a disease.
We really do. The text points out that we have become so accustomed to constant, high-octane stimulation that the moment we feel a lull, the moment we feel even a hint of understimulation, we treat it as a bug in our psychological system.
A glitch.
A critical error that must be immediately patched by reaching for a screen. But boredom is not a bug. It is a fundamental feature of a healthy cognitive state.
Oh, wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Oh, for it.
Standing in line at the DMV, staring at a beige wall, isn't a feature of a healthy mind. It's just agonizing.
It is boring, yes.
Right. So how is actively wasting time doing nothing better than at least clearing out my spam folder or listening to an educational podcast or reading the news? My brain is literally screaming at me that I could be utilizing that time.
I completely understand the resistance. It's a very modern reaction. But we have to look at what the brain is actually doing when you are allegedly doing nothing.
Okay, what is it doing?
When you aren't bombarding your brain with external stimuli, no podcasts, no emails, no reading, your brain doesn't just shut down. It switches processing modes.
Switches modes.
Yes. It activates what neuroscientists call the default mode network, or the DMN. This is the state of mind wandering. And this state is highly active and metabolically expensive.
So it's not idle. What is the default mode network actually doing?
When you are bored, that is the mind's signal that it has finished dealing with the immediate demands of the external environment.
Yeah.
And it is ready for internal processing.
Internal processing.
Right. It is during this mind-wandering phase that your brain sorts through the events of the day, consolidates short-term memories into long-term storage, processes complex emotions, and most importantly, makes novel connections between seemingly disparate pieces of information.
So it's like your brain is running a defragmentation program on a hard drive in the background.
That's a perfect analogy.
It's taking all these scattered files of information you've acquired and organizing them so the system runs smoothly. But it can only run that defragmentation program when you take your hands off the keyboard.
Exactly.
If you are constantly inputting new data, the system just gets messier and messier.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. If you immediately fill every single in-between moment with digital input, you are robbing your brain of the time it needs to solve background problems.
Which explains a lot.
Have you ever noticed that your most profound insights or the solution to a problem you've been stuck on for days often come when you are taking a shower.
The classic shower thought.
Exactly. Or going for a walk without your phone, or washing the dishes.
Yeah.
That isn't a coincidence. That is the default mode network in action. That is the power of tolerating the void.
Tolerating the void. I love that phrasing.
Yeah.
And I actually want to issue a challenge to you listening right now.
Oh, a challenge. I like it.
The next time you are commuting or waiting in a grocery store line, or even just waiting for a pot of water to boil on the stove, try to endure it with absolutely zero digital input.
It's harder than it sounds.
It really is. Don't look at your phone. Don't put in your earbuds. Just tolerate the void. It will feel incredibly uncomfortable at first. Your hand will literally twitch toward your pocket.
That's somatic impulse.
Right. You will feel a spike of anxiety. But just sit with it. Observe the discomfort and see where your mind goes when it isn't being led on a leash by an algorithm.
It is a truly vital practice for regaining cognitive control. But of course, tolerating boredom is only the philosophical preparation.
We still have to live in the real world.
Exactly. Once you are comfortable with the void, we have to establish a practical framework for managing the actual technology in our lives. Because as much as we might want to, we can't all retreat to a cabin in the woods and communicate via carrier pigeon.
Though it sounds peaceful.
It does. But we still have to live and work in a highly digitized society.
And our source text introduces a tactical defense here, specifically referencing Cal Newport's concept of digital minimalism.
And we really must clarify immediately what digital minimalism actually entails.
Right, because people hear minimalism and think they have to get rid of everything.
Exactly. It is not a Luddite call to smash your computers and abandon technology entirely. It is a philosophy of rigorous, intentional cost-benefit analysis regarding your digital tools.
A cost-benefit analysis.
Yes, the core principle is that a piece of technology should only be used if it provides a substantial, measurable net benefit to something you deeply value in your life.
So it's treating technology strictly as a tool rather than a master. Think about a hammer. A hammer is an incredibly useful, perfectly designed tool if you need to drive a nail into a piece of wood. But you don't walk around your house mindlessly swinging a hammer at the walls just because you happen to be holding it.
That would be ridiculous.
It would. Yet that is exactly how we treat our smartphones. We just swing them at every free moment of our day, regardless of whether we actually need to build anything.
The digital minimalist actively questions those default behaviors. They ask, does this specific app genuinely enhance my life, my career, or my relationships? Or does it primarily function as a time sink, preying on my attention?
Right. Is it serving me or am I serving it?
Exactly. If an app is just a slot machine designed to harvest your time without providing a massive return on investment, the minimalist uninstalls it.
But what about the tools we absolutely do need? Like, we need email for work. Many of us need Slack or Teams to communicate with our colleagues. The source outlines this amazing concept for managing those necessary evils, creating digital fences and time blocking.
These are crucial tactics. How do you envision a digital fence operating in practice, especially within a demanding work environment?
So let's apply a digital fence to a real scenario. Normally, our default state in the corporate world is being online and accessible all the time.
Always on.
And we occasionally try to carve out a few desperate minutes of focus between messages. A digital fence reverses that polarity entirely.
Well, I like that. Reverses the polarity.
The text suggests scheduling a 90-minute block of complete offline concentration. You put up a massive impenetrable fence around that time. You close the email tab, you log out of Slack, you put your phone in another room, you do your deep work.
Okay.
And then, and here's the genius part, you follow it with a designated 15-minute block specifically scheduled for distractions.
So you are intentionally scheduling the distraction.
Yes. You literally put it on your calendar. 10:30 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. Go crazy. Check all the emails, read the news, scroll Twitter, respond to Slack. By scheduling the distraction, you are containing the chaos. You are making the engagement proactive rather than reactive.
That's a strong approach. But let's look at the real-world friction of this.
Okay, play devil's advocate.
Scheduling distractions sounds great in theory, but doesn't that just give you permission to go down a rabbit hole for 15 minutes, incur a massive amount of attention residue, and basically ruin your focus for the next deep work block anyway?
That is definitely the risk, but the constraint of the 15-minute window is the defense mechanism itself.
How so?
It forces triage. When you only have 15 minutes to clear your entire communication backlog, you literally don't have time to fall down a rabbit hole.
You have to move fast.
You scan for emergencies, reply to what is absolutely critical, and ignore the rest. Furthermore, when the urge to check your phone hits you at, say, 9:45 a.m. during your deep work block, you don't have to rely on sheer willpower to say, no, I can never look at my phone again.
Right, because willpower depletes.
Exactly. You just tell your brain, not right now. We get to do that in 45 minutes at 10:30. It completely defangs the somatic impulse because you are deferring the reward rather than completely denying it.
That deferral is powerful. You are dictating the terms of your engagement with technology, not the other way around.
Right.
Now, implementing this in a real corporate culture does require communication. If your boss expects you on Slack 24/7, suddenly disappearing for 90 minutes can cause serious issues.
Yeah, you might get fired.
Right. So the digital minimalist negotiates these boundaries. They communicate,
Right.
Hey, I will be offline from 9 to 10:30 to work on the quarterly report. If there's a literal fire, call my personal number.
Set the expectation.
Over time, colleagues adapt to your predictability,
Yeah.
and they actually respect the boundaries because your output quality increases drastically due to the deep work.
You are reclaiming the territory of your own mind.
Oh.
And this brings us toward, well, kind of a grand synthesis of everything we've discussed today.
Big picture.
The text ends on a truly profound note that elevates this entire conversation from a simple productivity hack.
Right.
Getting more widgets made by 5 p.m. to an absolute existential imperative.
It really does. The overarching theme here is the cultivation of intentionality.
Intentional.
To be focused in the modern world is not a default state anymore. It is a conscious, continuous, and highly challenging choice. And the most profound reason to make that choice is the undeniable psychological reality that what you pay attention to, in essence, becomes your reality.
Man, I want to let that sink in for a second for everyone listening. What you pay attention to becomes your reality.
It's true.
Your reality isn't the physical room you are sitting in right now. Your reality is whatever your brain is currently processing. If your attention is constantly fragmented, a stressful text message here, a catastrophic news headline there, a 30-second dance video, an urgent email from your boss, your lived experience of the world will be equally fragmented, chaotic, and deeply anxious.
It is an unavoidable law of human psychology.
Yeah.
Human consciousness is forged by the objects of its attention.
Forged by
If you spend your days consuming algorithmically curated outrage, well, your reality becomes hostile. If you spend your days immersed in deep, meaningful work, your reality becomes purposeful. If algorithms are dictating where your attention goes, they are dictating the shape of your reality. Therefore, reclaiming your focus is a fundamental act of personal sovereignty.
Personal sovereignty.
It is reclaiming authorship over your own life.
Personal sovereignty. Taking back the pen and writing your own story rather than letting a piece of code write it for you.
That's beautifully put.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to ponder long after this deep dive ends. We've established that what you pay attention to becomes your reality. And we've established that we are living inside highly engineered cognitive wind tunnels, optimized to hijack that attention using our own biology against us.
The battleground is your daily experience.
So, if what you pay attention to becomes your reality and you are currently allowing algorithmically optimized ecosystems to dictate where your attention goes, whose reality are you actually living right now?
That's the question.
Are you the author of your own life, or are you just a character in an algorithm's business model?
That is the defining question of our era. A deeply sobering thought to take with you into the rest of your day.
Thank you so much for lending us your undivided attention for this deep dive. We know exactly how valuable and fiercely contested that commodity is in the age of distraction. We really encourage you to step away from the device now, look out a window, and enjoy a moment of intentional, beautiful boredom. Let your mind wander.
Until next time,
Yeah.
stay focused.